We're about to be in the 5th chapter, and things are really getting very exciting. Let's just a quick recap as to where we are. We know that Esther was chosen to replace Vashti. This was a big deal. She was in power. This was a very difficult time for her, and she's kind of like being a sleeping agent, if you will, holding still in the palace until she got the nod from Mordechai, who, if you remember, saved Achashverosh's life by reporting that Bigsan and Teresh were going to assassinate him. That was written down in the Chronicles, in the Book of Chronicles, actually Book of Remembrance, actually, to be fair, which is a different book, which was about to be read. So now, Mordechai has said to Esther, the time has come, go and see Achashverosh and tell him who you are. It's time to reveal you're a Jew, because he kept nudging her, by the way, where are you from, what's your background, and she had a certain look to her, a certain character that whoever met Esther said, she's ours. Everyone felt tremendous connection to her. Achashverosh was obsessed with this. He tried to do everything he can to fish out of her where she was from. The time has come. Now, she was very nervous to see him. Anyone remember why she was nervous to walk in to see him? How would they have known? Seemingly, she was an orphan. She was adopted at a young age, and maybe that's just how she wasn't recognized. Maybe she was just never recognized, And once she was in the palace. But it was not known. Even the Jews did not know. Mordechai was the only one, and he kept it that way. Because once one Jew finds out, you know what I'm saying? It gets spread. That's what they say. Maybe it was difficult to do it. Okay, so now she's fasted for 3 days. She's scared to go in. Why? Because you need 30 days permission. Remember that 30 days permission to go see the king? That, but you remember. 30 days permission to go and see the king. Okay, Achashverosh. The time has come. And it says, Vayhi b'yom hashlishi, and it was on the third day of the fast. Actually, it was Passover. And all the Jews were not eating or doing a Passover Seder because they were all fasting for her success. For this decree that had come upon them. For Tilbash Esther Malchut, she wore royalty. Now, there's different opinions. The basic interpretation is that she put on royal clothing to go and see Achashverosh. But the Talmud says different. The Talmud says that actually she was clothed in royal spiritual clothing. Right? After fasting for so long, being so spiritual, God's presence was very strongly with her. And it was very, very palpable and very evident. The Ta'amod, now the word Amod, she stood. So where is she standing? B'chatzar Beis HaMelech, at the courtyard of the king. But the word Amod means to stand. Does it sound familiar to you? Amod? Amidah is
the prayer of the service.
Right, the prayer service that you stand. Right, the Shemona Esrei is called the Amidah, we stand, which is the highest point of the service. So the word Amod is actually a code word for she prayed. She was praying fervently. As far as she was concerned, she wasn't going to make it. Remember, at the end of the last chapter, she said, if I die, I die. I mean, that's just the way it's going to be. I die spiritually, I'll die physically. She went in to see the king, and the king was on his al-kisei mocheh, sitting on his throne, Beis al-Malchuch, at the royal throne, opposite, and he sees her. Yeah. We're on the second verse of the 5th chapter. Vayihi, and it was Kirot HaMelech at Esther Malka, when he saw her standing. By the way, the Thomas, when he saw her standing there, he was furious. How dare she walk in? However, when she saw the condition she was in, because she was weak and tired and could barely stand, he knew that something very, very big and important had happened, and she had to tell him this. He knew something was up. So he sees her, and immediately, miraculously, she has tremendous chen in his eyes. Now, I mentioned it before. She was considered to be the most beautiful woman. That's what they say, although, again, a different opinion. Some say she was in her 30s, 40s, 50s, even 60s. But she had tremendous chen grace. Whoever saw her just was totally enraptured with her being. He sees her, he falls for her, and he says, Vayoshet HaMelech, and he put out his golden scepter. Now that was the sign you were accepted. No scepter, no living. You're dead. So The scepter goes out, she touches it, and that's a sign. And what does she do? Now the plan, which to us is actually unknown up to this point, comes into play. What was the plan exactly? What is she trying to do? So she does something very unusual. V'tikrav Esther, v'tika barosh Hashem. She touched this staff. Verse 3. V'yomer melech malach Esther malka. What is it, Esther? What can I do for you? Uma bekashateich. What is your desire? Ad chatzia malchut. I'll give you up to half of my kingdom. What is he referring to? What's the other half that he doesn't want to give to her? So the Talmud says, actually, the land of Israel. He knew the land of Israel was strategic, and he wasn't willing to give that away to anybody else, especially not Jerusalem. Because remember, he was the one who prevented Cyrus building the second temple some years before. He said, whatever you want, but you're not touching Israel. I'll give you whatever you want. And I'll give it to you. Vatome Esther, and Esther said, if it's good for you, come to you and Haman should come today, El Hamishta, to a feast that I made for you. Asher City Lo. Now here read the Hebrew, because the plan, by reading the English, you're not going to get the plan. But if you look at the Hebrew, there's actually a clue in the Hebrew as to what she was starting to concoct. Just look, if you can, at verse 4. Vatome Esther, Imar Melech Tov, if it's good for you, Yavo HaMelech Vahaman Hayom El Hamishte, to this feast, Asher City Lo. Now what does lo mean? No, that's lo, lamed aleph. This is lamed vav. Lo is no, but lamed vav is something else. What does lo mean?
I thought it was here. No?
No, that's kan. Lo means, I'll give you the feminine. The feminine is la. Lamed hey.
To him?
To him. To him, lo, to him. You knew that? Clicked. What do you think she's doing over here? What should she say? Come to the feast that I made for you. Lacha, for you. He says, lo, to him. So this is very, very interesting. What she's actually doing, most people are not aware of this, is she started to plant a seed in Achashverosh's mind that, anyone have a guess? That Haman and her were in collusions. She was hinting that I made for Haman, that you can come to. That I made for him. So it was like a slip up. She's starting to, and now remember, he is a paranoid, freaked out dictator. That's what he is. And every dictator is always freaked out most by the people closest to them, like Big Son and Teresh. So now she is starting to insinuate, yeah, me and Haman, we're very close. So she invites Haman as well. Now Haman is not aware of this. He's about to be called. He's going to get very excited. Vayom HaMelech Maru es Haman. Quickly, bring Haman la'asot edvar Esther, so we can do what Esther said. And they brought him to this feast. Okay? Now we're at the feast. So she's got her, and there's Haman, and there's Achashverosh. Now she is still weak from fasting. And they're at this feast. Vayomer HaMelech, as he says to her, B'mishta yayin, ma she'elatech. She'elatech means, what's your personal request? And I'll give it to you. Uma b'keshatech. And what is your request for other people? He realizes something's going on over here. Maybe she wants something for herself. Maybe she wants to do something for other people. He's not sure. So he's offering both. And he said the same thing. And I will give you up to half my kingdom, but not everything. You're not getting Israel. What does she do now? She makes another request. Vatan Esther V'toma She'elati. I'm going to tell you what my personal request is, and my request for others. If it's good for you, and a melech tov, and you want to listen to me, come to another feast that I'm making. So she makes another feast, which is not going to happen this day, it's going to happen in the future. Now people read this, and they're like, another one? Well, why did she tell him already? The Jews are about to be killed. Well, not about to be, in about a year's time. But why didn't she reveal it? Right? Remember we said, I think last class, that she had to tell him now because this was an opportune time. The decree is still fresh. And look at the change. Look at verse 8. You and Haman come to the feast. Asher aseh lehem, that I made for them. Right? Now that's Haman and Achashverosh. And now she's including Haman as well into this whole process. Now the paranoia is built, it's gone up a notch. Right? She's starting to freak out. And that's going to happen tomorrow. Now, how do you think Haman feels? So Achashverosh is starting to get suspicious. He's getting nervous. He gave Haman a lot of power, and now suddenly the wife that he loves is starting to get into collusions. Something's happening. Why is she inviting Haman to the party? I'm the love of her life, not this guy. But how does Haman feel? What do you think?
Like he's the closest person to the royal family. Like he is.
Exactly. He feels amazing. He's got all the money. He's got a big family. He's got all these sons and daughters. And now he's got power. And the king and the queen love him. So he's seeing this from a completely wrong angle. He thinks, this is my way in. It's fascinating. He leaves sameach, happy, v'tov lev, and good in his heart. But there's one thing which is a spanner in the works. Is that an expression here in America? It is now. Right? There's something which is needling him, a thorn in his side, and that is Mordechai. He walks past him, look at verse 9. And remember, Mordechai is in sackcloth and ashes, still mourning publicly about the decree for the Jewish people at the entrance to the gate. So he walks past him, and Mordechai doesn't get up, doesn't even move for him. Everything he's acquired means nothing. Look at verse 10. Haman is ready to strangle him, but he restrains himself. He doesn't want to act against Mordechai in case Achashverosh doesn't want him to. He also wants to wait. He wants to make it a big, big hit. Ve'avo Beit goes to his house. Now in his house is his wife and his loved ones. Look at verse 10. Ve'yishlach v'yaves ehavav. He goes to his loved ones, Zeresh, his wife. Now Zeresh was his wife. She was an extremely evil, nasty woman who hated the Jews as much, if not more, than Haman. They were an evil couple. Ve'sapelem Haman et kavod ashro. And Haman starts by saying, I don't get this. He starts to tell his family how rich he is. Why is he doing that? They know how rich he is. It's like, one of those businessmen having a bad day. Let me tell you how powerful I actually am. Right? You know what, Rich? He's starting to try and make himself feel better. He's so upset about this Mordechai thing, trying to make himself feel better. And he says how great he is. You know how great I am? He's like pretty much talking to himself. Right? Look at verse 12. I'm invited to this incredible banquet tomorrow. Right? I'm invited with the king. And this means absolutely nothing to me. When he says he means it, all the money, all the power, because one Jew won't give him the honor, driving him nuts. Driving him nuts. Every time I see Mordechai, Yehudi, Yosheb Shar Melech, Mordechai the Jew, includes that. He's not just saying Mordechai, right? That's what anti-Semites do. They find one Jew they have a problem with, they tarnish us all as being a problem. So they say, we got a great plan. Make for yourself a big tree, a gallows made of wood, 50 cubits high, which is about 75 feet, something incredible like that. And tomorrow, speak to the king and hang him on it. Now, why did he choose hanging? Of all the things, why did he choose hanging as the way he was going to kill him? So they kind of figured out all the other ways that Jews had been defeated, that had snatched victory from defeat. The Jewish people were going to be covered by water after they left Egypt, right? The Red Sea split. Don't use water, Jews can escape that. Can't throw them to the lions, because Daniel, the prophet, he escaped from a lion. That also wasn't going to work. How about, tying him up, as is Samson, right? Tie him up and stoning him? No, Samson got out of that as well. Blinding him? Samson was blind, he still managed to beat the Philistines. He went through every case in Jewish history, and so the only thing the Jews haven't done well with is hanging. Maybe this is going to help us, which was wrong. but let's try a new way to tackle them. And that's what he wanted to do. And he loved the idea. It was awesome. Okay? And he made this big tree, right? This big gallows, 50 cubits high, in order to hang Mordechai. Now the scene changes. Let's go back to Achashverosh. Chapter 6 opens up with Achashverosh, who is asleep. Now we mentioned already, when you see the word Hamelech, the king, who else could it be referring to? Hashem, God, right? The ultimate king of kings. Right? That's the alternative reading. So you can read it two ways. So it says, by Laila, who on that night, Nadadash Nat Hamelech, the king was awoken from his sleep. So the basic interpretation means Achashverosh was asleep, and he had a nightmare, and he woke up. Now what the nightmare was, I'll say in a second. But the other interpretation is that God, if you will, wasn't asleep, but he was kind of sleeping to what was going on, and now his mercy, through the fasting and the repentance and everything that Mordechai and all their business had done to save themselves, kind of woke him up to make a good decree for the Jewish people. So even in God's mind, things were about to change for the Jewish people. God doesn't sleep, but it's just a metaphor for God as well. Okay? So he has a dream, the Talmud tells us, that Haman was hanging over him with a sword ready to kill him. Because Haman was in his mind. So he has this dream, and he wakes up, and he couldn't sleep. So what kings used to do was they would have people read for them their book of remembrances, certain books of chronicles that they owed stuff to people with. He says, bring me my book and read for me. Right? And it was read before him. Right? So kings would have people read for them, you know. Verse 2 of chapter 6, and it said in there, hey, you owe a favor. Who to? To Mordechai. Mordechai saved your life. You never paid him for this. It's time to pay back Mordechai for saving your life. Right? Because he stopped big time in Teresh the two servants that you had from killing him. Vayom HaMelech, verse 3, and the king said, what can I do? What can I do to honor Mordechai? How can I pay him back for what he did for me? Immediately, now it's the middle of the night. That's important. Vayom HaMelech, mi b'chatzer. And he says, I can hear something in the courtyard. Who is it? V'Haman balachatzer. Haman is in the courtyard. He turns up just the moment Achashverosh wakes up. Now, when should he have arrived? Well, his wife Zeresh said, go in the morning, Babok, go in the morning. But he was so excited. He was so excited to kill out the Jews that he forgot where he was, and he went straight away in the middle of the night to go and see Achashverosh. That was bad. Achashverosh had woken up. He's already suspicious, and suddenly Haman's turning in the middle of the night. What does he think is happening in the middle of the night? He thinks that Haman is going to kill him. He's very suspicious now. It's just getting worse and worse, and about to get even worse than that. So he hears Haman is in the Chatzer, right? Who actually come to ask him to kill and to murder Mordechai. That's what he actually came for, not to murder Achashverosh. Look at the end of verse 4. Verse 4 even gives you a hint. It says, which he had prepared for him. Right? Haman came to the palace to ask him to hang Mordechai on the gallows he prepared for him. So Heichin lo, Hebrews, Heichin prepared for him, can be meant to mean Mordechai, but actually, says the Talmud, it meant for himself. Really, this whole thing was turning around because eventually he was going to be hung on the gallows that he wanted Mordechai to be hung on. So they said, it's Haman. So he calls Haman inside and he says, fine. Now let's do a little trick on Haman. Look at verse 6. Chapter 6, verse 6. Vayavo Haman came. What can we do to honor a person that the king wants to honor? Now, who is Achashverosh referring to? Mordechai. Who does Haman think he's referring to? Himself. He's like, 1 second. I've been going up and up and up. It must be me. It must be that he's referring to me. So what does he say? He's like, oh, I'll tell you what you should do for him, thinking he's referring to himself. I'll tell you what you can do. Let him wear royal clothing. There's clothing again. Right? Remember the theme of clothing keeps coming up again and again and again. Beautiful clothing. Dress him up. Put him on the royal horse and parade him. And then put the royal crown upon his head. Now Achashverosh knew that Haman thought he was talking about himself. And he did not like that. So you took my wife, I gave you this power, you have all the money, and now you want to take my crown? But Haman, actually, according to many commentators, even wasn't referring to himself. He said, put the crown, if you look through the verse, put the crown on the horse, because the royal horse had a crown on it. And that'll be a nice way to honor him. He didn't even mean his own head. By the way, he saw how upset Achashverosh was when he said that. He never mentioned the crown again. The rest of the conversation, crown doesn't turn up. So they get the horse ready, he says, and he says, let it happen, and we're going to parade him on the horse. And then the king said to Haman, quickly, it's a great idea, go and get Mordechai. Haman's like, Mordechai? What are you talking about? Mordechai gets paraded? He goes, yes. And you are going to parade him through the streets, and don't miss out anything you said. End of verse 10. Everything you said, make sure it happens. So he had to do everything, and he had to embarrass himself by being the one to parade around Haman. So Haman, by parading around Mordechai. So now Mordechai gets dressed up. Now what's he been wearing up to now? Sackcloth and ashes, right? Now he's getting dressed up in beautiful clothing and being paraded about Haman. Haman et alavush, he took the clothing and the horse, and he parades him through Berchavah, right through the main thoroughfare. Vayikra love kacha, he said, and he says, this is what happens to a person who saves the king. Now, part of his reason for doing this, by the way, was to show people what happens to them if they divulge assassination attempts against the king. He wants to stop people assassinating him, right? Because you never know where it can come from. So he wants to. So he says, take it to the main street, let everyone know. Anyone saves my life, this is what happens to them. You get richly rewarded for your actions. What happens now? It doesn't actually in the Megillah, but the Talmud says that is a very famous story that his daughter saw this from a distance from a roof, or a high window. She thought, wow, Haman, my father's being paraded around, and Mordechai is carrying him through. She thought it was the other way around. It doesn't make sense any other way. She took a chamber pot that was full of what you put inside chamber pots, refuse, and pours it on who she thinks is Mordechai, the guy leading the horse, but it's actually her father, Haman. And it falls and hits him. He looks up. She realized who it was. She's so upset. She's so distraught what she did to her father. She throws herself outside the window and she kills herself. Which actually makes sense because at the end of the verse 12, it doesn't really work so much in the English, but in the Hebrew, he went to his house, Avel v'chayrosh. He goes to his house in mourning with a covered face. Who would cover her face? Mourners used to cover their faces. It was a sign of mourning. He went into immediate mourning for his daughter who had died. So now Haman was up, and now he's beginning to see that he's going down, down, down. It's not looking good. Verse 13. So now he turns up, he's like, okay, this is not good. He tells his wife and all his loved ones everything that happened to him, the whole story. And they said to him, his wise people said to him, why are they called the wise people? They were his family. So one opinion was that his friends and family, his loved ones, once they saw what happened to them, they realized you're not going to win. They're like, we're not friends with you anymore. And the other people say no, they gave him wise advice, which he's not going to follow. But they gave him wise advice that he did not listen to. But it was wise. You say wise things, you are considered wise. Wise people say wise things. They gave him some wise advice. And what was that? They said, listen, this guy Mordechai, he's from Jewish stock. Okay? It's not going to work. You're not going to beat him. Forget about it. Just get over it. This is a sign that Mordechai is in ascendancy. You're going down. Don't do anything against him. Now, he could have possibly listened, but it was too late. Because the time for the second feast, remember that one? Had arrived. Odom and Dove, they were still speaking, and the king's courtiers said, time to come to the feast that Esther has made. And this is the main part. It all comes down to this, my friends. Chapter 7. So now, remember everything that's happened so far. We're building up. We've got the second feast. She's about to reveal who she's from, where she's from. Haman is present. Achashverosh is present. And Esther is there. And they came. Haman lishtot im Esther. Now she's eating and drinking now. She wasn't before. Right? The fast is over and she's eating and drinking. And the king said to Esther, whatever you want, I'll give you whatever you want, even half my kingdom. He's still there, he's still in love with her. She says, if it's okay, and I've brought grace in your eyes, if it's good, save my life and save the life of my people. Now, why did she say save my life first? It's like she cares more about herself than the others? Why do you think that is? Save my life, that's my she'elah, and save my people, that's my bakasha, that's for other people. Why herself first? Sounds pretty selfish, right? Because she realized that he loved her. He didn't care about her people. If he found mercy, if she found mercy in his eyes, maybe the Jewish people will find mercy in his eyes. So she used this as a technique. You love me, right? You love me? Save me. But save my people as well. And he says, all my people are about to be killed and wiped out and become slaves. Right? And the person who wants to do this doesn't want to sell us, he wants to kill us. Doesn't even make financially. You're going to lose all the money. Right? Because there's one man who's doing all of this, and the king says, who is this person whose heart is there to kill? And Esther says, verse 6, Ishsav oyev Haman harashan hazeh. The word zeh always means somebody is pointing at something. It's verse 6. She points at Haman. Now, what does Haman do at that point? He did not see it coming. He did not see it coming at all. She's called Haman an adversary, an enemy. She's saying he's betrayed you. He could have just sold my people. He would have made some money out of us. He wants to wipe us out. She's going to lose money. It makes no sense. He wants to kill me as well. Haman freaks out. Haman is furious. Now the Megillah says he is absolutely he's trembling with anger. Nivat, he's trembling. He's furious. But he wants to calm down a little bit. So he leaves the Mishnah and goes out to his garden to calm down a little bit, which is perfect. What is Haman going to do with Esther? He's going to plead for his life. Oh my goodness. He's going to kill me, the king. He realized all the terrible thing. However, the king came back. Haman was pleading. While he was pleading, another quote-unquote coincidence happened. He tripped up and he landed on the bed. V'nofel al hamita. He fell on her bed. Now, he wasn't in her chamber. They were having a meal. But in those days, they didn't have chairs. They had they would lie down. In the Middle East, they lie down to eat on a bed, basically. That's the way it was for a long time. So he's pleading with her. He trips up, lands on her bed. And here's another coincidence. Asher Esal Leha. Vayomar Malach, and he walks in and sees this. What does he think, the king? That's two possibilities. One, he's trying to attack her and kill her, or he's trying to be intimate with her. And that's it. That's the final push that Achashverosh needed, right? And he says, take him away, he's going to be killed. The Haman chafu. Okay, he's done. They're going to kill him. And Charvona is one of the kings. Interesting. Charvona happened to be one of the king's advisors who was all pro-Haman. As soon as he saw Haman not doing well, he became pro-Esther and eventually Mordechai. Right? Leaders in political positions are very fickle. You know what I'm saying? Like politicians. You know? Someone said, what is politics? Poly means many, and ticks are blood-sucking creatures. Right? So everyone is swishing and swaying and deciding which way they want to go. Okay, they take Haman and they hang Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordechai. Okay? And once this happened, end of verse of chapter 7, they hanged Haman on the gallows, and the king's anger, shachacha, calmed down. Okay? He was extremely angry. He was angry, right? Or another way to which other king was angry but it calmed down? Hashem, God was angry with the Jewish people over the attending the feast of Achashverosh all those years before, and now his anger finally abated and the Jews were safe. But were they? That should be the end of the story, right? There's another couple of chapters. What is still a problem? Do you remember? What's something still up over here?
The decree.
The decree, exactly. They still had a decree against the Jews that had been sent out to all the provinces, remember that? So now Mordechai and Esther are in a good position. But they can still save the Jews. They were safe. But the decree had gone in. Now maybe in the local environs it was okay, but further out the decree was still there. But even there it wasn't good. So now what we're going to have to do is try to get back this decree. Now that's not so simple. Why? Time is on their side, but what isn't on their side is something else. And that is, once you start taking back decrees, all other decrees are seen as pathetic. So Achashverosh is not going to let them do that. You can't negate a previous decree. Because then people are like, well, how do you know any other decree you've made is not going to be negated? Right? So it's like, this is bad news. So they have to think of a plan to try and stop that decree. So they have to think about it. They come up with a very interesting strategy, which kind of works. Doesn't completely work, however. Smile your own camera. So he took off the ring from Haman's hand, and he gave it to Mordechai. So now Mordechai has taken on a position of power in the government. Okay? Seemingly not. Seemingly not. He seems to be okay with it because he loves it so much. He's fallen for her and the people. He didn't like them before, but he's willing to tolerate it. Look at verse 3. Now Esther says, listen, V'tosef Esther v'daber. Now she starts to plead with him. Please. And she starts to cry and she pleads with him and says, Haman is still dead, but his plan is still in action. We still have to save the Jews. Right? And he does it again. He puts out his golden scepter and says, okay. So she said, listen, if it's okay with you, Lahashiv et asfarim, return those original decrees that went out. Right? The plan of Haman, Hagagi, the Amalekite, which he made. Now he turns around and says, listen, I've given Haman's estate to Esther. That's his response. Meaning, everyone knows that you guys are Jewish and they're not going to want to hurt you. So I'm not going to let you do that. Right? I'm not going to. And Haman is being hung. They know that his decree is not good, but they won't satisfy. He's basically saying, "I'm not going to let you do that." Right? Everyone knows you're Jewish. Everyone knows that I hung Haman, who was the enemy of the Jews. Don't worry about it. So they're like, "It's not going to work." So they have to think of another plan. So what they say is, they say, "Listen, how about this? Allow us to write another decree saying that the Jewish people are allowed to defend themselves." So it's an additional, not an alternative. Additional decree, let it go out, that the Jewish people, wherever they are, at that day, right, in Adar, 10th of Adar, are allowed to protect themselves when they come to be attacked, and won't get into trouble for protecting themselves and fighting back. And he agrees to that, and that is sealed with the signet ring. So now they've got to get this decree out. They crucified Melech basically, and they went. And on the 23rd day of the third month, that is the month of Sivan, right? And Mordechai dictated it, and sent it out that a new decree had come into effect. Look at verse 11. To the effect that the king had permitted the Jews of every single city to organize and defend themselves, to destroy, slay, exterminate every armed force of any people or province that threatened them, along with their children and women, and to plunder their possessions. He says, you know what? The Jews can fight back. That was the best he was willing to give them. And it was good. It wasn't great. Because he wasn't saying you're forbidden to attack. Just like, by the way, I'm going to let them fight back. They're entitled to do it. They're entitled to defend themselves. That was the best. And that's what they did. And so a decree went out, and it went right through the kingdom. Okay? And right away, now, what's happened over here, it's interesting, is we jump forward to that decree being sent out, and then we're going to re-enter into the room where Mordechai and Esther, where Achashverosh and Esther are having this conversation. Okay? And Mordechai. So we had like a little, in other words, it happened, they said the decree. Now let's go back to the original story, which is verse 15. So Mordechai left the king's presence, clad in royal apparel of blue and white and gold crown. He's now an important, special person in the city of Shushan, and they were very, very happy. Right? It's Halav Samecha. Now look at verse 16, a very important verse. We sing this verse every Saturday night at the conclusion of Shabbat. LaYehudim hayata, to the Jews there was Ora, light, Simcha, happiness, Sason, joy, Vikar, and honor. What exactly is this verse talking about? So on the basic understanding, there was light and happiness, because they were in the dark. Actually, some say physically. Many Jews were hiding and started to hide themselves as Jews in Persia, knowing full well that eventually they're going to get killed. Some say that all the mitzvot they had been doing, they had to do secretly because people started to make fun of them of being Jews and started to threaten them. So they were living as Jews secretly. So now there was light. They got to go out into the light. Literally, they went out into the light, and they were happy and joyful, and they felt honor for the first time. That's on a physical sense. But the Talmud says something very interesting about this verse that the Jews started to feel at this time. I'm going to talk more about this next class, but I want to mention it now. Ora is light, but is a code word for Torah. Torah, Ora, the light of Torah. Simcha means happiness, but it's also a code word for Jewish holidays in Shabbat. V'samachta, be happy. V'chagecha, the Torah says, on the Jewish holidays. So now they started to keep Jewish holidays again. Sason is a code word for a Brit Milah. It was difficult to perform Brit Milah circumcisions on their children. Now they started to do it again. Vikar and honor. That's a reference to tefillin, which is referred to as an honorable thing for Jewish men to wear. So says the Talmud, actually what they were saying, what this verse is saying is that these mitzvot didn't exist for a while and started to exist now, which means they were forbidden, but now were permitted. But there's another opinion that says, that's physically, but spiritually, they never felt connected to these mitzvot until now. Although they've been around for hundreds of years as a people, now they started to fully appreciate this event of the Purim story, and their redemption affected them in such a big way that they changed totally. Their whole relationship with Jewish was different. This one event. And it shouldn't be so unusual to us. We have the same thing, right? We have certain events in history. Let's think of negative events. The Holocaust. There's pre-Holocaust, post-Holocaust. Not the same. They went through this massive change. Pre-9/11, post-9/11. That one event, which didn't even affect everyone, still affects us as a society. Pre-1948 Israel, post-1948. Well, there were Jews in Israel before, there were Jews in after, but it had changed. There was a different relationship they had. They were majorly affected by this. We were no longer the same people. It changes completely. Our whole relationship to Judaism and Shabbat and everything else was changed as well. And there was a massive celebration that happened when they realized they weren't going to be wiped out. Okay? Yakar, it gives honor. It's an honorable thing. That's the final one. Ora is Torah, Simcha is holidays, Sason is joy, is Brit Milah, and Vikar. The commentators say how these words appear in other verses referring to those mitzvot. Okay? But on a basic sense, they started to do mitzvah again, which they were not able to do. And every single place they felt it. And look, here's a reference to the custom of costumes. Many non-Jewish people wanted to convert to Judaism. This is very common. When Jews are doing well, non-Jews want to convert and become Jewish. It happens. When Jews are not doing well, like Germany in 1943, not that many converts to Judaism for some reason. Poland 1942, not so many converts. Sometimes when the Jews are doing very, very well, America 2016, they're knocking down the doors to get in, some of them, right? Everyone wants to become Jewish, You don't realize it, it's happening, right? Suddenly it's like, good, you're Jewish. It actually works in your favor, right? So they did it. Many tried to do it. To the degree that they even started to dress up as Jews and act like them. But the reason they started doing it was because they were nervous of the Jews. They were trying to save themselves. They felt we should do it for that reason. Okay. So now we jump. And we'll finish with this, because I've got to go forward next week. Now we've jumped forward. 13th day of the 12th month with Zadar. The decree was sent out. Now they were attacked in Shushan and elsewhere. They tried to kill the Jews, but they fought. On the 13th of the month of Adar, they fought and they won. In Shushan, 500 people came to attack us and they were wiped out. By the way, had that decree not gone out, it would have been many more. And there were many, many more all over the rest of the provinces that had got out. So it didn't fully work, the decree, but the Jews managed to fight back, and miraculously, they won. Yeah? That's what it says, chapter 9, verse 6. Over Shishna Bira, Hargiyo Dim, Va'aben 500 ish. 500 ish. Now, ish actually, some say, is a word for important people. People in parliament. They were actually big people that came to kill the Jews. They wanted them out. And they were miraculously wiped out. Okay? And this is all in self-defense. Now, what's interesting is that they were entitled to take the spoils. Thank you so much. The spoils, the loot, the booty. But they didn't take it. Why? Because many years before, when the Jews fought Amalek, they did take the spoils and got into trouble. Over here, which they weren't permitted to do. Here they were permitted to do it, and they said no. We learned before that we're going to not. They didn't take a single spoil. They could have. Always where you went to war, the losers lost what they had. That's just the way it was. All right? Territory, clothing, whatever it was. Jews says, we don't want it. So they fight back and they win. But look at this next piece. Now, can you see there's an interesting little design on your Megillas on chapter 9? Can you see it? You have to turn over. Yeah. What is that? So this actually are the 10 sons of Haman who were hung on that day as well. They came to attack as well, and they were killed, and they were hung on the same gallows. Now, look at how it's kind of put in a straight line. So over here, it looks like the gallows they were hung on, because they were actually hung one below the other, all up together in one place, and they all died at the same time. What's interesting is that when the reader reads this, he reads it in one breath, which, by the way, is very difficult. So he reads it at Ves, and he does the whole thing in one breath, because they all died in one breath. So to remember that miracle, they all died together like that, it's read in one breath. So when you hear the Megillah being read, you'll hear him go, he reads right through it. And there's a big vav. You see the big vav? I think it shows up at the end of verse 9. There's a big vav there.
It's a large vav.
It's a large vav. Why is it a large vav? Sometimes in the Torah it has large vavs and small letters, because that's like the pole, the tree gallows that they were hung on. It's a reference to that. It's one interpretation. Okay, and it says in verse 10, they never took the spoils of war. So now Haman is dead, and his 10 sons are dead. The decree did go through. A counter decree came back to help them, and the Jewish people was saved and greatly celebrated. Next week, we're going to do just a little bit more from the Megillah, but then I'm going to bring out new source sheets next week to learn out incredible lessons and connections between Purim, Yom Kippur, and Shavuot, and how Purim actually the lessons we learn from here and the effect it has upon our people is greater than all the other holidays. That's going to be next week.
That when you're not sure about it doesn't mean necessarily that there's no answer.
He was excited.
Meaning,
Good. All right. See you then. Sorry.